That's a clown question, bro.
Hi, what's up on you?
So I'm gonna kick some dirt.
He gets on base.
Just a bit outside.
I'm not the type of player that's going to be Johnny Hustle.
If you don't want me to watch the ball, you can go get it out of the ocean.
And welcome to the show to be named later, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I am your host, Chris Giant. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, we just endured the worst winter meetings of all time. Only like 2 or 3 interesting things happened the entire week. It was awful, which maybe that's because it's all online, but nonetheless, I'm doing very well. We got a lot to report anyway.
Yeah, we have a good show planned today. Yeah, I think, winter meetings just they didn't do well. Maybe, people's internet wasn't working well, or
the biggest the biggest transaction news of the week happened right after we stopped recording last week.
Yeah.
It was like 20 minutes after we got off.
Yeah, but like I heard, negotiations with Real Muto, like Real Muto's agent was like his Zoom audio wasn't working. So what are you
gonna do?
What are you gonna do? So they tried to negotiate in the chat part.
Someone cut the wires on Scott Boris's modem.
Yeah, yeah. They tried to negotiate in the chat thing, but they decided to wait till another day.
Yeah.
So that's why winter meetings were a bit slow. But we do have some interesting news. First off, some news that happened today as of the date of this recording. The Negro Leagues are officially recognized as a major league. So we're going to be seeing Negro League stats recognized as, major league stats. The major leagues, they don't just include, because, historically already, they don't just include the American League and National League. They also have, all those weird 1800s leagues like the Union Association that happened for 1 year in 1884, the American Association, the Federal League that happened from 1914 to 1915. But now the Negro Leagues, which is around for 30 or 40 years, or
it was 1920 to 1948.
So almost 30 years.
Almost 30 years.
That's going to be recognized. I'm not sure the extent of the statistics, however, but it is an interesting development and a pretty cool development that's going on with that. Yeah,
I mean, I felt like this was long overdue. I'm kind of surprised that this wasn't already a thing beforehand. Like I think everyone already associates the Negro Leagues and their history with Major League Baseball. It just wasn't official as of today, the day that we're recording this. But I think we can all say that we're glad. I mean, Josh Gibson, if he ever got the chance to play in the big leagues, he would have had an incredible career. Satchel Paige was a guy who was lucky enough to get over there. You had guys like Monty Irvin, Cool Papa Bell, many others that made their careers known over there in the Negro Leagues. Some of them, unfortunately, never got the chance to perform in the American League or National League, but regardless, their efforts are all recognized now in the MLB record books.
And whatever they may be, we kind of wish that we had more stats like that, because it's a lot of speculation, because Josh Gibson is kind of the ultimate example of like there's his historic legend that says he hit like 800 home runs, which is pretty crazy. So we wish we had that knowledge, but whatever the players from that league were able to do is now going to be counted in history. So for our history shows, it might change up our shtick a little bit in terms of how guys compared, and it might alter some how about that's. But
will it though? Like when you look at those how about that's, does that include like Union Association seasons?
Yeah, it does.
It does.
Actually, you know what? I hate to alter it a bit, but anyone at home, go ahead and look up Fred Dunlap's 1884, where he took over the Union Association. He was like the best player. It was it's quite unreal. Just off topic, but yeah, the Union Association, they only were a league for 1 year, and Fred Dunlap absolutely wrecked the entire league. He led the league in runs, hits, home runs, the entire quadruple slash line. He had a 256 OPS plus. So these, that can, it can be altered, but, I guess you can put a plate appearance minimum on that because, he didn't reach 500 plate appearances that year. And like, it is weird with, I guess this is more inside stuff, but like with qualifying seasons, the 1871 seasons where they only played like 35 games, those count as qualifying seasons. So
yeah,
sometimes you have to alter that because like Josh Gibson, to bring it back to the point, is like we don't really know how many games the Negro Leagues played.
because according to his
season.
baseball reference page, he never had more than 209 plate appearances in a season, which, in modern times at 162 game seasons, that'd be like roughly a third of the season. That's kind of like a 60 game season almost. But nonetheless, I mean, if you want to look at so many of his seasons, in 1943, his age 31 season, he slashed 486, 489, 862, 1351 with one walk in 183 plate appearances, but also 12 home runs. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of things are. I mean, from a statistical standpoint, this is a little weird because we don't necessarily know how many of the actual records are out there.
Yeah,
we'll have to see. And I mean, by the way, like I think it kind of goes without saying that like obviously in the Negro Leagues you were facing different people, but I think in a lot of instances it could have translated very well to the MLB. I mean, if you just look at Satchel Paige when he did get the chance to go over there towards the end of his baseball career in 1951, his age 44 season, I believe he led people with at least 60 innings pitched and strikeouts per 9. He had 7. And also in 1952, in his age 45 season, he pitched 138 innings, had a 3.07 ERA with a 2.85 FIP, made the All-Star team, and got an MVP share, getting 17th. So, I mean, even at age 45, like Satchel Paige was a guy who just delivered. And it's a shame that because of, how the times were and how the color of his skin, unfortunately, he wasn't able to get that chance earlier because I'm sure we could have seen one of the greatest pitching careers of all time. But nonetheless, I mean, I'm very glad he got his chance, and he made the most of it for sure.
Yeah, it does definitely make sense to put it as a major league because also like, I guess we talk about, I guess a point that is brought up now is that I think African Americans in baseball make up like less than 10%.
I think it's like 8%. Yeah.
But back, when baseball was the most popular sport back, in the 40s and 50s, it was probably ultimately when integration really fully kicked in, it was like, 20%, 25% maybe. So, and, it was just integrated with amazing players pretty much immediately, Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays, Frank Robinson, Roberto Clemente, a bunch of different great Hall of Famers with Hank Aaron. So immediately you saw the effect on the game. So it does make sense to put it as a major league. Not all the players in the Negro League would have been major league quality, but a lot of them would have anyway. It's sort of like a AAA or something like that. Very competitive league.
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we'll never be able to answer this question, but if Josh Gibson or a guy like that was ever able to get his chance, like he probably could have been one of the greatest players of all time, possibly the greatest. I think he was a catcher of all time. Yeah. Like he could have been like, we could be talking about the best catchers of all time being Johnny Bench and Josh Gibson.
Yeah. It would definitely change the conversation if we had all that data. But do we have anything more on this, I guess, change of ways here?
I mean, I think it's long overdue. I mean, I don't know how long this was in thought. I mean, I don't think any like common baseball fan ever really put this out there that it wasn't a league until today. But this is necessary, and I'm glad that we get this recognition that they deserve.
Yeah, yeah. So now we move on to the news that we addressed at the beginning of the show. How, yeah, it did happen on the night of the recording, about 2 hours after we recorded our last episode.
Yep.
And this was a pretty big deal. And actually, it is funny, like with name association.
Yep.
At first, when I saw it, I was like, oh, just another deal. And then I was like, oh, wait, this guy's like been one of the best pitchers in the past 2 years. Lance Lynn has been traded from the Texas Rangers to the Chicago White Sox for Dane Dunning and I think another minor leaguer.
Yeah, Avery Wins or something like that.
Yeah. But yeah, Lance Lynn, he's known, people know him a lot for like his Cardinals days. And I think he spent like 6 years with the Cardinals and he was kind of a, number 3, number 4 guy, but he's developed
had such a weird career arc.
Yeah. He's, he sort of found himself, I think, worked on like his spin rate and things like that. And ultimately just improved himself as a pitcher generally. And, one of the more valuable guys out there, back when Shane Bieber had that crazy start to the season, Lance Lynn was up there with him through like the first half of this season. I know it's only a month, but Lance Lynn was a guy whose ERA was like in the low ones for a little bit. It went back up, but still he's been very good, especially in the last 2 years.
I mean, if you really look at all his numbers, ever since 2014, he only really has one bad year, and it was 2018, and that kind of ruined everything because that was like age 31. It's sort of a expected rate of when someone starts to decline. So, and it was also in a contract year. I remember like the Rangers signed him to a 3-year, $30 million deal. And I remember thinking, like, what are they doing? Like, they're really paying $10 million a year to Lance Lynn. And I ended up being dead wrong. I guess if you want to show in a little bit of concern, he did have a 4.19 FIP in 2020, but he also led the league in innings pitched and games started in batters face. So this is a guy that's going to give you innings. He's going into his age 34 season. And I mean, this is a team that is going to need wins. Mind you, the manager of this team is also the manager that Lynn made his major league debut with. And it's, if there is an old school style of managing that Tony La Russa plans on inhibiting in Chicago, Lance Lynn is a good type of guy for that.
Yeah, he's a guy, I guess he used to be more of a pitch to contact kind of guy, but now he's more of a strikeout guy himself. And
who isn't though? Everyone's a strikeout guy nowadays.
I guess that is the case. But yeah, Lance Lynn, if you're not aware of how good he's been since 2019, he leads all of Major League Baseball in innings pitched. He's second in B WAR and fifth in F WAR among all Major League pitchers. So it's a very big deal that he is going to the White Sox, and he joins, makes it out to be a very respectable rotation in Chicago, on the south side of Chicago. Giolito. You're thinking Giolito, Lynn, Keuchel, Cease, and then you have that amazing lineup. So
and then very comes back too.
A deep team with Chicago. Yeah,
it's been a very interesting week for Chicago because they gained Lance Lynn. They also lost James McCann, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I mean, I think this is a really good. I know we always talk about 1-2 punches in a rotation, so this might sound a little weird, but I think he and Keuchel make a good 2-3 punch because they are sort of in different. I mean, they're in similar stages of their career, but they perform so much differently. Where Keuchel has become a ground ball pitcher that focuses on, pitching to contact when he used to be more of a strikeout guy. And then Lance Lynn, although he's right around the same age, he's sort of the opposite, like you mentioned. Now he's a strikeout guy. So I think that is a good 2-3 punch to go along with Giolito, who's obviously going to perform. I think that's one we can lock in. And the White Sox, the lack of pitching depth is kind of what led to their downfall in 2020. In Game 3, they had to start Dane Dunning, who's no longer in the organization, but they had to use him sort of as a secret opener, and they ended up going through basically all their pitchers in that winner go-home game. So now you bring in a guy like Lance Lynn, who literally pitched the most innings in the league last year. That's going to help your team.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's not only for the production, but also the innings pitched, the workload, and things like that. And yeah. Like, if you were to like when we were previewing the White Sox coming into 2020, talked about mostly the offense and I guess the top two guys in the pitching staff. Now you got three very respectable guys. Cease, who you're kind of working on, he's a bit of a project, and then I think you mentioned Kopech's coming back from Tommy John surgery, who has been a top prospect for a while and actually looked pretty good when he was in the majors before he had to get surgery. So
he did, and I think he opted out of this season, so he's healthy.
Yeah, he's definitely ready to go, presumably. And yeah, I mean, if they weren't AL Central favorites before, definitely AL Central favorites now.
I mean, I think we all know what the concern is with the White Sox. It's not the lineup. It's not the pitching. It's
Hall of Famer baseball person.
Yes, Hall of Famer baseball person of the year.
Yeah. But yeah, we and anything more on the Lance Lynn deal?
I think that's about it.
Yeah. Got right through it. So speaking of White Sox, not White Sox coming into the organization, but White Sox that are heading out. Not that the White Sox are really losing much because they already have an all-star catcher in Yasmani Grandal. But James McCann has signed with the New York Mets for a 4-year, $40 million deal. So it looks like the Mets are going to have a pretty decent catcher for what seems like the next 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most surprising thing to me with this deal was the longevity of it. I mean, I don't think a lot of people were. I mean, at least I wasn't really thinking 4 years for James McCann. And I mean, JT Realmuto's got to love that because that's going to make the market on him so much better. And we'll talk about him in a little bit because this does have a big impact on him. But James McCann, he's obviously going to be leaving a team with a very good lineup. So the White Sox probably aren't kicking themselves for this one. I don't really know if they made any effort anyway. But he made some big improvements offensively after leaving the Tigers. His best single season OPS plus was an 88. He goes over to Chicago, gets a 108 and then a 144 this year. He had an OPS close to 900 this previous season. So Steve Cohen, he's been coming in, making some moves. We talked last week about Trevor May. This week we're talking about James McCann. And it's interesting because he's going back to a pitcher-friendly ballpark, which is where he was in Detroit. I don't know if that's going to play much of a factor. What do you think?
What I will say is, I guess, offensive adjustments were made. And, I guess, Comerica Park, I wouldn't put Park much into it because Comerica Park is not like the ultimate pitcher's park, and Guaranteed Rate Field is not the ultimate
it's more, I mean,
hitter's park.
Yeah, I guess what I was trying to say with that, he's going somewhere where that is less favorable to a hitter.
Yeah.
I think Guaranteed Rate is still much more favorable than Citi Field.
Yeah, I guess. And McCann, by the way, since 2019, top 5 in FWAR among catchers.
Yeah.
So that is a good sign if you're a Mets fan and wondering how good he is. He's been since 2019, according to FWAR, he's been a top 5 catcher in baseball. So that's what you're getting. I think the Mets are really hoping that, you know, it doesn't go like necessarily like the Wilson Ramos deal, which wasn't a big failure, but it was a little disappointing. I think going long term might be more of a strategy for them because, I'm guessing they don't really have a catcher coming up in the farm system.
I mean, literally 3.5 months ago, we were talking about them acquiring Robinson Chirinos at the trade deadline.
Yeah,
So that's what their catcher situation looked like before this.
yeah, it wasn't great. So, they're going long term. They figure why not invest in that. Steve Cohen, he's coming in. He's not worried about a budget quite yet. This is his first year, and made sure to get that deal done. But yeah, it's good. I mean, it's another, like the Trevor May deal. It's filling a spot. I guess this is more important than the Trevor May deal, but definitely filling a necessary spot. Not No splashes yet, but very necessary for the Mets, which is what you like to see.
Yeah, this was a move that needed to be made. This improves their team, their catcher position by a lot. I don't know. I mean, the Mets have a pretty good lineup, honestly. This like McCann might be like a bottom of the lineup type of guy, which I think is good for him because he's not going to have to play as big of a role, and it's kind of what he's used to in Chicago. I mean, he was part of a very deep lineup over there too. Now he comes to New York where he's with guys like Pete Alonso, Jeff McNeil, J.D. Davis, Michael Conforto, Brandon Nimmo, Dom Smith. Like there's some star power in that lineup, and McCann is the newest addition.
Yeah, yeah, and when you talk about that, like the Mets are one big splash away from like being seriously contending with the Braves.
Yeah.
If I guess with the Mets, they always go in a different direction than you expect them to.
But this is different.
But it seems different.
Mm-hmm.
They might have a little bad luck, but I think it should work. By all accounts, it should work. It's not a bad deal. It's a good deal for
with
both
the Mets,
sides.
the issue has always been the ability for their players to stay healthy. James McCann, I don't think has a serious injury history. He played 31 games last year, so I guess that's not great. But he also probably split time at catcher or DH.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not great. But I mean, I guess we'll see.
Yeah, I would assume that him playing only half the games last year was because he was behind Yasmani Grandal. I don't think I wouldn't
because they would have had Edwin. They would have had Edwin as their DH, and they would have had Grandal as their catcher. They would have had Abreu at first.
Yeah. So
I want to get that right though.
I wouldn't put too much stock into it, but yeah, I mean it's kind of a very basic good deal for both sides. Something you like to see.
And for the White Sox, it isn't too bad of a loss either. I think they can get by without him. I don't think they've made any additions to the lineup this offseason that I'm aware of. Nothing serious. I don't know if they're really going for anyone on this market. I know they were like sort of like a possible contender for guys like Springer. For guys, I can't really think of anyone outside of Springer that they were really like in. And not even really like conversations or rumors, just kind of like, oh, it would make sense. So I don't know how much they're going to really add, but either way, I think this lineup is good going into next year, especially when you added Lance Lynn.
Yeah, for sure.
They do need to get Alex Colomé back, though. I will say that.
Yeah, because he was a big reason why the bullpen wasn't an issue last year.
He was awesome, yeah. Hold on, let me look at it. I think he had like a sub-1 ERA.
Yeah, he was
at 0.81.
Yeah, I do remember
297 FIP. Not great, but still, I mean, not great in accordance to that ERA, but even still, you'll take a 297 FIP.
Yeah, he was a serious contender for like reliever of the year. I remember like MLB Twitter put out a poll of like AL reliever of the year, and Colomé was one of the finalists, and
he is
one of the three options.
He is a 2.27 ERA over the last 2 years with the White Sox.
Yeah, very, very good. And yeah, if you don't have him, there might be concern
Actually,
there. And you,
since 2016, he has a 2.62 ERA.
yeah, that's very good.
Very underrated.
Yeah,
More in the ranks.
you want him in there because if you have him back, you can confidently say that the White Sox are a complete team and they don't really have any clear holes.
And there were a couple guys in the White Sox bullpen that broke out last year, or like Evan Marshall was one of those guys. There were a few others as well. I mean, they had Garrett Crochet come up straight from the draft. That was pretty cool to see. Matt Foster was one of those guys. Definitely not Jimmy Cordero. Cody Heurer was another one as well. Like they had guys that came up last year that were big for them in the bullpen. But I still think Colomé should be a guy that is on the radar. He is the 11th best ERA among relievers that are qualified since 2016.
Yeah, that's almost cracking the top 10.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, definitely should be on the lookout for that. If you're the White Sox, if you're associated with the White Sox at all, it would make a lot of sense to bring him back. But yeah, the Mets ultimately getting a good catcher. The White Sox not really losing much because they already have a great catcher with Yasmani Grandal that they gave a lot of money to already. So, all positives there. Even, the White Sox didn't really lose that much. So, but basically all positives. And the last bit of news we will get to before we address our bubble case of the week in terms of Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Indians after 2021 will be retiring the name Indians.
Is it after 2021?
I believe so.
Huh.
Yeah. They will be. Yeah, they'll be. They're going to go on a farewell tour with that name.
Interesting.
And they're going to change it after that. So I guess this has been discussed. I remember it first being discussed. I don't know if it was the name or the logo, but I remember there were like protests at the 2015 ALCS, like outside the Rogers Center or something like that.
So that would have been 2016 then, right?
Or 2016, correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a problem, and so I guess it's been a 4-year development, and
at least,
I guess it kind of makes sense.
I mean, they already got rid of Chief Wahoo a couple of years ago. They started the consideration process right around the time that the Washington football team decided to disband it from their name. So I think it was sort of just by affiliation. But I mean, once you heard that they were considering changing it over the summer, you knew that it was going to happen because you can't just say that you're considering it but then decide to keep it. Like that's not going to go over well. As far as potential names, we've both been very adamant about bringing back the Cleveland Naps.
Yep.
It's probably not going to happen, but I just want to live in a world where I believe it can.
For sure, me too. But by the way, for people who are unaware, Nap Lajoie was the best player for Cleveland, so naturally
for 1 year, by the way.
For 1 year, 1 year before the name, yeah. So naturally they named themselves the Cleveland Naps from 1903 to 1914 until
I think that all teams should just name their team after their best player.
I mean, like there are teams where it would be appropriate because they like, or I guess it would be different.
The Philadelphia Schmitz.
Yeah, like there would be some conflicts, but yeah, like Boston Williams. The Boston Williamses, that would be nice.
The New York Ruths.
I feel like there would be a giant debate in San Francisco. Like, do you name it?
I see what you did there.
The what?
A giant debate there in San Francisco.
Oh yeah, giant debate in San Francisco with like Mays and Bonds.
Coming up, it's the San Francisco Mays versus the Miami Conines.
Who even is their wins above replacement leader?
I think it's Kev Conine. The Miami Sheffields. We got the New York Ruths versus the Tampa Bay Longorias.
Yeah, what would Arizona be?
The
Gold-
Arizona Johnsons.
Yeah, nice.
There'd be like 3 teams named the Ryans.
Yeah, true.
The
Very
Houston
true.
Ryans versus the Texas Ryans against the Los
The-
Angeles Ryans of
The
Anaheim.
Chicago Ansons from that's their wins above replacement leader, Cap
Yeah.
Anson, who
Well, that means we would have to have the Pittsburgh Wagners.
yes, for sure. I would not be opposed to that.
Yeah, unironically, give us the Pittsburgh Wagners.
Yes. But yeah, I guess the most popular on the internet is the Spiders, who
Yeah.
they that was their name before the Naps.
It's sad because nobody's talking about the Cleveland Broncos. That was their name before the Naps. That was their actual name before the Naps.
Yeah, and
They're the Cleveland Broncos in 1902, and after 1 year of Nap-Lajoie, where he had a 990 OPS, they were like, all right, we're the Cleveland Naps now.
they could go back to the Cleveland Forest Cities.
From 1871.
Yeah,
I would be so happy if they did that. That might be the new leader in the clubhouse for me. The Cleveland Forest Cities.
They could pay tribute to their 1872 6-16 season. But yeah, those are just a few of the recommendations that we personally have here at the show to be named later.
They'll just they'll just have like the skeleton of Deacon White throw out the first pitch at the first game.
Yeah, and here is Deacon White's great granddaughter.
He was born December 2nd, 1847 in Canton, New York. Slavery was still going on, and this dude was in a hospital in Canton.
Yeah.
Oh, in Canton, not Canton. Never mind.
Oh yeah, he's literally he was 18 when the war ended.
Yeah.
By war I mean Civil War.
No, not World War II, not the Cold War. No, the American Civil War.
Yeah.
When Abe Lincoln freed the slaves, he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. Deacon White was just out here getting ready to play for the Forest Cities a couple years later.
He was good to enlist.
Honestly, he probably was. I mean, he was born in 1847, so he would have been like at the perfect age to fight for freedom.
Yeah. Now that begs the question is like how many Civil War veterans were in Major League Baseball? I guess probably a decent amount.
What do you mean the National Association?
Or yeah, the National Association, the National League. But yeah.
I'll never forget that 10-19 season.
Yeah. The Cleveland.
Also, they need to play their first game in Fort Wayne, by the way, because that's where the first game was ever played.
Yeah, there we go.
Against the Keki Enges.
But yeah, so those are our thoughts on the on Cleveland changing their name. I guess
you can't not do it after you said you were considering it, because that would not have a good outlook.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm kind of happy they didn't go with Cleveland baseball team, like Washington did, but
that'd be a good meme though.
It would be the perfect response, definitely.
The baseball club.
Baseball club, the Cleveland Ball Club.
Baseball Club.
Cleveland Ball Club. I mean, if you named your team Ball Club, I mean, that's not. It's better than
ball team.
Baseball team. If you're or the Cleveland Club.
Oh my God! Can we just make that permanent? The Cleveland Club.
Yeah, the Cleveland Club.
The Cleveland Naps, the Cleveland Spiders, the Cleveland Forest Cities. Yeah.
It's like, oh yeah, Jim Thome went into the Hall of Fame with his club hat on.
It's literally just the letter C logo.
Yeah.
Oh wait, does Thome have the C? He probably has a C, because I know he was like openly against the Chief Wahoo logo.
Yeah. Yeah, if you go with Cleveland Club, you could also do like a C with inside a C. That would be yeah.
Does anyone's Hall of Fame plaque have Chief Wahoo on the hat?
probably like Bob Feller and
Uh,
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know
Tommy
about
has the C.
recently.
Bob Feller also has the C. I don't think so.
Oh,
Larry Doby.
yeah. Who
Larry
else?
Doby probably has the C as well. It's the same era. Yeah, he does.
Yeah, and like they didn't have anybody in like from like the 70s or the 80s.
No. They had Tommy. Yeah. No, I don't think so. Probably a good thing in 2020.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to see. But yeah, so that's all the news that we have for the week. Very slow news week, but we made the most out of it, I would say.
We had a couple
Um,
big moves.
yeah, couple decent moves. Yeah, I think the Lance Lynn one definitely I think got put under the radar. Like that, if he was in free agency, he would have been right up there with like Bauer
Bauer.
in terms of
Yes, 100%.
in terms of targets.
Starting to wonder like what teams really are going to be in the market for Real Muto because the Phillies. Oh, we should probably talk about the Phillies hiring Dave Dombrowski.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's another
That
thing
happened this week.
that happened.
Yeah, it's like we're not done with news. Yeah, so the Phillies hired Dave Dombrowski to be their next general manager. I don't think anyone is surprised to see him getting a job once again in baseball. I mean, he's a proven winner. He's built winning teams virtually with every club he's been with. He's won the World Series twice, and he's now with the Philadelphia Phillies. It's weird because what my initial reaction when I saw this was you could have looked at the Phillies roster without any context and predicted that Dave Dombrowski built them.
Yeah, very very much so. You know, the the obvious Dave Dombrowski signs are, big stars, lots of money being spent, not a well-developed bullpen, and not a well-developed farm system. And I guess the Phillies check all those points.
Yeah, I mean they're paying Bryce Harper 27 mil a year like they were last year. They have guys like Wheeler, Arrieta, McCutchen, Segura, even Didi and Real Muto made above $10 million last year. They're probably gonna have to pay guys like Nola soon. They already extended Scott Kingery like before he even played a game. Yeah, and then obviously the bullpen. I mean, they need no introduction. The worst bullpen in baseball last year, definitely in the National League, probably baseball. Yeah, I mean, it's very weird because it's confusing as to whether they're actually going to be able to spend money or not. Like that's been an actual question that people have been wondering. So, because Dave Dombrowski is a guy where if you hire him, you want to win and you want to spend money to win.
Yeah, it like the with the point, and I think it's kind of obvious. We both agree on this. The point hiring him now doesn't really make that much sense.
No, like I predicted he would have gone to the Angels, because that's sort of a team that's building itself from the ground up and is going to have money to spend. They don't exactly have it right now, but next year they have guys like Pujols and Upton off the books. That's going to clear up a lot of spending room for them. But that's besides the point. The Phillies are a team that already has a top 5 payroll in all of baseball. They haven't finished above 500 since 2011. They've kind of just been hovering over the past few years. They should have made it to the playoffs a bunch of times. It's just very confusing to see what sort of direction they're heading in. There were those reports last week about them shopping Zach Wheeler, but then the front office and management was like, no, we're not doing that at all. So it is very weird, but it's definitely interesting to see what Dave Dombrowski may or may not bring to this club.
Yeah, and like I know that this particular organization wasn't looking for a general manager, but like he would have been a good guy to take over like with the White Sox or something.
Yeah.
So somewhere with a good farm system or at least good young players that you can trade off to.
I don't think the White Sox would get rid of Rick Hahn, though. It's the only thing.
Yeah, but like, the type of organization that he would take over, that would be a type of organization because, when he took over the 2015 to 16 Red Sox, it was a very well-developed farm system. They had money to spend.
He did
And
that.
that's exactly what he did, and it was the perfect formula to get a championship. But this one, it's weird. Like he showed up like or at least they hired him probably 2-3 years late. I know he was
Like,
I
I
know he
mean,
was
it could have, I
employed
mean, obviously
before,
he was with Boston, but like
but
it would have made sense. Like you would have thought they hired him the season before the offseason, but that they brought in Bryce Harper because that's when they brought in McCutchen, that's when they brought in Segura, that's when they brought in Real Muto. Like, and then to top it all off, they signed Harper to a 13-year, $330 million deal with no opt-outs. So like that would have made sense. So of course he was in Boston at that time, but it's interesting.
yeah, it's weird, because yeah, what the Phillies are trying to do now, or like I don't really know what the Phillies are trying to do now, but it's not a Dave Dombrowski formula where it's getting the big guys because they already have the big guys. It's just every surrounding position and their bullpen and their 3 through 5 starters. All those areas need to be addressed, and Dave Dombrowski is not really that type of general manager. He makes the big moves.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really need to make the big moves anymore. They need to address the smaller holes
Yeah.
in the roster.
I mean, first of all, you should look to get JT Realmuto back. Like that's a guy that 110% makes your team better. Outside of Harper, you could probably argue that that's the best guy in your lineup. You got to like what you have with Alec Baum. You got to like what you have with Reese Hoskins. You got to hope that Andrew McCutchen still has something in the tank. You're losing Didi Gregorius. You do still have Gene Segura. But I mean, there are some holes in this lineup still. Like Phil Gosselin was your DH last year. Like that, you can't expect to be a playoff team when you have Phil Gosselin. But then again, you got to expect Scott Kingery to be better. Um, Mickey Moniak came up last year, so there are guys with potential. But this is a team that's going to need to rely on a lot of guys to step up next year, especially in a loaded division like that. I mean, you could make. I said this a couple weeks ago. You can make the case that on paper this is the worst team in the division.
Yeah, especially with all the problems they have to address, because it's a very very top heavy team, and then it's a steep decline from there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, with the Phillies, I feel like they should have, if they wanted to hire a new general manager, I guess I would have gone for a more, I guess, Heim Bloom type, a guy that's worked
Yeah,
in a smaller payroll situation who, can kind of wheel and deal, get some,
someone
you
who
know,
came from. I mean, the Red Sox just got Billy Bean, which I know that they've been in those discussions for 18 years, but that would have been a perfect type of guy to bring in.
yeah, like a guy that randomly can get you a Nick Anderson or
Mm-hmm.
randomly get you,
Or Randy Rosarena.
yeah, Randy Rosarena. Um, people who kind of have that deep knowledge of things that are going on at the lower levels, and addressing the problems that aren't as glaring as or the not the crazy problems, getting seventh, eighth, ninth inning guys, getting an extra outfielder, things like that. But yeah, anything more on the Phillies hiring of Dave Dombrowski, other than just kind of general confusion?
Confusion. It's confusion. I'm surprised that it happened at this stage of where the Phillies are at.
Yeah, personally don't see it working that well. If I had to make a prediction, I think it's probably going to get worse for the Phillies if they couldn't make the playoffs in a 16-team format in 60 games. I don't know
When they only
what.
had to win 2 of their last 10 games to make it in,
Yeah,
or however many it was.
like I don't know where they go from here. Maybe they surprise us. I don't know.
2 of the last, and they had to win 2 of their last 8 games, and they went 1-7.
Yeah,
Yeah.
ultimately, yes. That was a problem. But yeah, so that now we are officially done with the
Yes.
news, unless something comes up again.
Unless we think of something that happened that we forgot to report on.
Yeah, I mean it's been 9 days since we recorded, so it makes sense that we could forget a story like that, but we got most of them.
We did.
So now we move on to our bubble case of the week, where we're addressing a guy who's on the Hall of Fame ballot, who I guess is being, the theme has been guys that are sort of getting ignored by the writers, but probably should be getting more consideration. It's
This is
another
one of the
case.
top cases of that.
This is one of the top cases with that. That's been the general theme so far. So first we talked about Bobby Abreu. Our second week was Mark Burley, who's on his first ballot. Then last week we talked about Todd Helton, and this week we're talking about Andruw Jones, one of the more dominant guys of the early 2000s. Believe it or not, believe it based on the actual statistics. But yeah, Andruw Jones, he has been ignored, generally speaking. He's been on 3 ballots thus far. He got 7.3% in 2018, 7.5% in 2019, and 19.4% in 2020. And thus far in the current election, out of 43 ballots that have been casted out of
396.
Out of 400 that are going to be cast ultimately, Andruw Jones currently has 30.2%. So based off of the small sample, getting a bit of a rise, something to be optimistic about in the future, because he's not getting in this year, probably, but by his 8th, 9th, 10th time, there's potential there. So, what's the general look with Andruw Jones? Like when we see Andruw Jones, what are we seeing with the Hall of Fame case?
Well, we're seeing, the first thing that people tend to look at is wins above replacement, and that is favorable to him. 62.7 B WAR, 67 F WAR. One of the few guys of this era to have a higher F WAR than B WAR, so that's interesting. On Baseball Reference, he had a 46.4 peak WAR, which is when they take the best 7 seasons they had and add them all up, which is actually above average among Hall of Fame center fielders. So his peak would fit right in with everyone else's. This is a little concerning. His career slash line is 254, 337, 486, 823. That is his slash line. 111 OPS plus and 111 weighted runs created plus. 1,933 career hits, 434 career home runs. So obviously power numbers are pretty good. And also his defense. That's one of his strongest traits on a baseball field. 24.4 defensive WAR, which is 22nd of all time, and 278.8 defensive runs above average, which is 11th all time. He won 10 Gold Gloves in center field, and he hit 273 with a 796 OPS and 279 plate appearances in the playoffs. So, Chris, you made some comparisons, people that were right around his range.
Yeah, and first I'll say, this is probably our most unique case so far, because we've done 2 position players, 1 pitcher. Pitchers are pretty easy to get a grasp of statistically, and the 2 position players we did were offensive dominant, so it's really a thing of did they excel at offense enough? Andruw Jones, it's debating the combination of offense and defense. Is he a Hall of Famer? Because offense alone, not a Hall of Famer. Defense alone, if he was very bad offensively, he would not be Hall of Fame caliber. An example of that would be Omar Vizquel, who not going to get into his news, but we've talked about Omar Vizquel being 18% below average hitter. Andruw Jones is 11% above average hitter, but if he was at that level of being that below average, that alone would not give him a solid his defense alone would not give him a solid Hall of Fame case. But because he was above average, I think there's we both think that there's definitely a solid case. So it's interesting with that because, with Todd Helton and Bobby Abreu, we were just looking at their offense because they were average to below average defensively, and it's a lot easier to measure when we're really only looking at one side of the game. But with this, it's very interesting because we have to look at kind of the combined efforts of Andruw Jones. So to the comparisons actually the one comparison I made, it's only with wins above replacement. So he had 62.7 B WAR, and he did it in 8,664 plate appearances. So here's the list of retired players with 60 to 65 B WAR in 7,500 to 9,500 plate appearances. And I note the plate appearances because, getting 60 B WAR in 7,500 plate appearances is a lot different than getting 60 B WAR in like 11,000 plate appearances. The guy with 7,500 plate appearances was probably a little more dominant during his time, and was probably better while he played, even though he didn't have as much longevity. But anyway, those players with those specific filters, Reggie Smith, who is a first ballot drop, Chase Utley, who I believe likely will get into the Hall of Fame, Joe Cronin, who is a Hall of Famer, Billy Hamilton, no, not that Billy Hamilton, but dead ball era Hall of Famer Billy Hamilton, who's well known for his base stealing ability and his walks. Ken Boyer, who we actually talked about last week, he maxed out on ballots. Mark McGwire is also fits this criteria. He would be a guaranteed Hall of Famer if not for PEDs. Jack Glasscock, who is a dead ball era non-Hall of Famer. Todd Helton, who we talked about last week as our bubble case. He's on the ballot. He's getting some traction right now.
Yes, he's +7, I believe.
Yeah, he's doing pretty well this year. Sal Bondo, who is a first ballot drop, Jim Edmonds, who was a first ballot drop, and Keith Hernandez, who was a 9th ballot drop. So actually, I would say that
those two last ones should be Hall of Famers.
Yeah, there's definitely cases, but I guess in terms of trends, in terms of what the writers look at, I guess they don't really favor Andruw Jones, but we kind of disagree with that because there are guys in that list that we think probably should be Hall of Famers. Like I think that Ken Boyer and Keith Hernandez definitely, I believe, should be a Hall of Famer. And then
I would add, Chase Utley obviously isn't eligible yet. I think he's going to have my vote when he gets on. Jim Edmonds, I'd also argue, is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, Jim Edmonds and Sal Bondo is a guy who had good defense and a guy who is like a combined effort guy, not really dominating one side of the ball. And usually with comparisons, I will compare guys in a certain range of OPS plus, but like we mentioned, it's really more of a combined effort with Andruw Jones in terms of offense and defense. So I'm not really comparing offensive numbers this episode because he was so prominent defensively, and it really wouldn't be fair to compare him offensively to anybody because it definitely wouldn't benefit him, and it would be quite odd to just do that. But is there anything that you draw from these comparisons before I get into the case against Andruw Jones?
I think we kind of just covered it. Like, there's a lot of guys on this list that get the short end of the stick, and it seems like Andruw Jones has gotten that so far in his time on the ballot.
Yeah, but luckily we do have the modern statistics now that guys like Keith Hernandez and Ken Boyer like didn't benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, luckily we have that, and newer age writers, more advanced knowledge of things like this helps Jones out, especially he's going to be with this year he'll be on 7 more ballots as long as he doesn't get below 5%, which he probably will not be getting below 5%.
I doubt it
at any point. But anyway, the case against Andruw Jones being in the Hall of Fame it's a lot of the more, basic, evaluation points. His ability to get on base at a 337 clip was kind of par for the course, especially for his era. Played in a more offensive era, so a 337 on base percentage. And if you're an average person or a batting average person,
Then get out.
he only hit 254. So if in terms of getting on base from hits, he was not very effective. He was he was more power heavy. But on base wise, was not, he was par for the course. Also, Andruw Jones, he had a very steep decline. So he had a very dominant era for sure, but he fell off pretty much immediately after that. So that would go in the case against him. Didn't really have very much longevity. I think that's why, if Andruw Jones had 2 or 3 more quality years, he got to, he could have maybe, if he didn't have such a steep decline, maybe got to 500 home runs. Maybe he's in already, but he did not have the longevity. And also in the case against Andruw Jones, he did not reach 2,000 hits or 1,000 walks. That kind of ties in with the on base stuff, but and also it ties into his longevity. Didn't really hit those milestones. Also, with Andruw Jones, he struck out 100 plus times in 11 seasons, and he did not exceed a 136 OPS plus in a season. So he wasn't exactly dominant with the bat for his era. And he never finished in the top 10 in any slash line category. So, even though he is, the case for him, he's above average offensively. He never really had a dominant run offensively, as he was never top 10 in, average on base percentage, slugging, or OPS. Never cracked the top 10 there. And in terms of the MVP vote, he only finished in the top 5 once in 2005. And the last thing I will say in the case against Andruw Jones, the case you could make against Andruw Jones being in the Hall of Fame, is even with defensive metrics, defensive ability and his impact on the game can be very subjective, and I'm kind of, I kind of understand the argument of defensive metrics not real, not being that reliable. So if you were someone that watched Andruw Jones and you were not that impressed, so to say, or don't really think he's doesn't exceed a Hall of Fame standard, there is that argument, because I would say with offensive statistics, I don't really need an eye test for offensive stuff, but with defensive stuff, I definitely understand having to kind of take a look at somebody to understand that. But in the case for him, he did do some spectacular things defensively, and he definitely had a very positive impact on the game defensively. But in the case against him, if you doubt defensive metrics, wins above replacement can be deceiving like that. So, if you're not very into defensive metrics, you might doubt Andruw Jones's Hall of Fame legitimacy. But if you are into that stuff, there's a very, very solid case for Andruw Jones being in the Hall of Fame.
Right. So we mentioned before his peak WAR of around 46.4, I believe it was, above average among Hall of Fame center fielders. So not just above average, period, above average among those who are already in Cooperstown. Andruw Jones' peak would fit right in. And he was top 5 in Baseball Reference wins above replacement 4 times during his career, which is a pretty substantial amount. He led the league in defensive WAR 4 times. He finished top 5 6 times, and he finished in the top 10 9 times throughout his career. And a lot of people on the ballot don't get consideration because of their alleged PED use. As of now, knock on wood, there have been no PED allegations against Andruw Jones. So that's definitely something promising. If a writer chooses not to vote for Barry Bonds, Andruw Jones would be a really good alternative, because he was very versatile on the field. He did everything extraordinarily well. He is
Yeah.
the only
And we're gonna mention, like, in his dominant era, he was behind, two guys that were controversial because of their
yeah,
PED use. So,
that's
like,
right.
if you take them out, he would have been the best player of that era. So,
Right.
definitely benefits him for sure.
He is the only player in Major League Baseball history to have 100 wins above replacement runs batting and 220 wins above replacement runs fielding. I'm going to explain what those stats mean. It's essentially just, I know WAR, can be confusing, but it's essentially just like the amount of wins above replacement runs you produced while batting and runs you saved while fielding. Andruw Jones is the only player with 100 batting runs and 220 fielding runs. And if you were to lower that filter to 100 and 200, 100 offensive, 200 defensive, the only players who apply to that are Andruw Jones, Adrian Beltre, and Roberto Clemente. I don't think anyone's challenging the Hall of Fame candidacies of Adrian Beltre and Roberto Clemente. You mentioned earlier his 2005 season. That is the only season in Major League history with 50 home runs and a defensive WAR above 2.0, which is very impressive.
Yeah.
Andruw Jones is one of just 26 players to have exactly 5 seasons of 6B WAR, 6 plus. 17 of those players are in the Hall of Fame, so that means I believe 8 or 9 would be left out.
Yeah.
But the players who are not in on that list are Shoeless Joe Jackson, who was involved in the Black Sox scandal, Ken Boyer, who we mentioned earlier, was maxed out on ballots, Todd Helton, our previous bubble case, who was on the ballot, Andruw Jones, of course, our case, and then Adrian Beltre, Chase Utley, Joey Votto, Josh Donaldson, and Mookie Betts, all of which are not eligible. So he's among some pretty great players there of exactly 5 seasons of 6 plus B WAR. And he has the 7th highest F4 among outfielders since the year 1970. That is 50 years ago. So over the last 50 years of baseball, the top 7 outfielders in wins above replacement, according to Fangraphs, are Barry Bonds, Ricky Henderson, Ken Griffey Jr., Mike Trout, Larry Walker, and Carlos Beltran. And then right behind them is Andruw Jones. Fits right in. So now if we want to take a look at his peak, he had the 3rd highest F4 in the majors, not filtering anything, from 1997 to 2006. The only people ahead of him were Barry Bonds and Alex Rodriguez, both of them alleged PED users. One of them confirmed and one of them alleged, but let's be real, he definitely did it. He is also one of 3 players in MLB history with 400 home runs, an offensive WAR above 35, and a defensive WAR above 20. The other 2 are Adrian Beltre, like we mentioned before, and Cal Ripken Jr. Jones is one of 3 players of all time with 4 seasons with 20 stolen bases and a 2.5 defensive WAR. Ozzie Smith and Joe Tinker are the other 2. They are both Hall of Famers. There have been 10 seasons in baseball history where a player has produced 26 home runs, 20 stolen bases, and a DWAR above 2.5. Andruw Jones owns 3 of them. Nobody else has more than 1. And then lastly, Andruw Jones has 6 seasons with an 800 plus OPS and a 1.5 DWAR, and that is tied for the most in baseball history with Chase Utley, Alex Rodriguez, and Hall of Famer Joe Gordon. So he's right up there with all the greats as far as guys who could hit, play defense, and run.
Yeah, for sure. He is definitely an embodiment of an all-around player, especially during his prime. He slowed down at the base running later in his career, as everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the tough thing with Jones, though, is he didn't. I guess he did dominate in one aspect of the game, but it's defense, and people don't really look at that. He's not part of an exclusive like 500 home run club or having like 2,500 hits. It's the defensive runs above average club. It's the combined batting runs and defensive runs, all these crazy stats. But even with that, he did win 10 Gold Gloves. He had the respect of his peers. He obviously was a great fielder. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. And according to Baseball Reference and Fangraphs, he was 11% better than the average hitter. So with all that, with the combined package, that's a legit great baseball player for sure. And
Absolutely.
I guess we're selling ourselves out here, but
Do we want to? I was say, do we
putting
want
him
to
on the
say
ballot.
where we stand on him?
Yeah.
I'm adding him this year, and I decided on that back in March.
Yeah, I think I will definitely be adding him.
Yeah,
Like
I did not vote for him last year, nor have I ever voted for him before, but that's going to change this year.
Yeah, because I'm thinking of like my my Hall of Fame power rankings in terms of where I feel like they are. I think Andruw
I
Jones is
think
like,
there's a chance we might just have the exact same ballot.
yeah, I think Jones is top 5 for me in terms of voting. I put him ahead of ahead of like Todd Helton, who I probably will be putting on the ballot. I put him ahead of Bobby Abreu, who we've already done, and a couple other guys that I probably will be having on the ballot. So I think I'm definitely going to be putting him on my mock ballot, as you will as well.
Yes. Now, obviously, our votes don't matter. Hopefully, one day they will. But
Yeah, that would be so cool.
that's honestly like I've kind of realized that might be my dream job, just to have a vote in the hall. Maybe I'll just ask Jeff Passan for his.
Yeah,
We'll do a collective one. I mean, we're gonna have the same one anyway, probably. So
or like Jeff Passan should have, or actually
he should like auction off his ballot.
he would like, so he'd get in trouble for this, but if he made it like the how the Packers, they don't have an owner, the fans own it.
Yeah.
So he would do a fan vote like on on like a website.
Honestly, I'm not even kidding you, man. I would trust that more than like 30% of the writers.
Yeah, or even like if you write an application or something like that, or you have like
you have to like submit a
at least
resume
5.
to get Jeff's approval.
Yeah, and for every person you check off, you like have a 5-sentence thing on why you're checking them off. That would be pretty cool in a hypothetical situation.
Yeah, like you can't just like let in some troll who's gonna put in like a LaTroy Hawkins only ballot.
Yeah, you
No
can't
disrespect to LaTroy Hawkins, but that's not acceptable.
But yeah, the people's
Great guy.
ballot, that would be nice.
Yeah, if Jeff Passan just, I that he should just auction off his ballot.
Yeah, that would be great. But yeah, Andruw Jones, probably the one, of the bubble cases we've done so far, the most confident I'm the most confident in his Hall of Fame case out of everyone we've done so far, out of the 4 that we've done so far. Also, yeah, if you want to check out our Bobby Abreu, Mark Burley, and Todd Helton breakdowns, make sure to look at those podcasts. It's in the description where they are. They're pretty much at the in the final like 20 to 25 minutes of each of our past few news episodes. But yeah, I guess that leads to the conclusion of the episode here. Our first podcast in about 9 days. It's been a while.
It's been a crazy week and a half.
Yeah,
Both
finals week.
lives.
Of course, don't want to bore with all the details, but yeah, especially now, it's super weird with school.
Yeah.
But yeah, we hope you enjoyed this news episode / Hall of Fame case episode. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, want to watch us talk, go to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It is called STBNL with Chris Gianta and Daniel Curran. And actually, on the YouTube channel, I'm going to start putting down just our full Hall of Fame case breakdowns. See if they get maybe any traction. If you just type in if you type in those names, maybe it'll come up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do, the Bobby Abreu one is up there, but I forgot to put the other 2 up. But yeah, if you only want to hear the Hall of Fame cases, I think I'll just put those as singular little videos, little podcast clips. But yeah, go to the YouTube channel for all that. If you want to follow us on social media, follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at STBNL Podcast, where you'll get all the updates on when we're posting, and a bunch of other stuff. And we hope you enjoyed this news episode, and we hope to see you tomorrow, where we are heading back to history, and we're talking about Lou Gehrig, and the day after that, we will be talking about the 2018 Milwaukee Milwaukee Brewers. See you then.